Gacha games. There are a lot of them, and I've covered Arknights briefly, I covered Blue Archive, Genshin Impact, and I bounced between them individually. Outside of this, I also play a number of other games, such as Hogwarts Legacy, which I do really enjoy. There's also Elden Ring, Grand Theft Auto, Red Dead Redemption, and so on. And even though there are a vast majority of games that I do cover, at least Gacha specific, on my channel, there are many that I play offline on my own free time, such as Epic 7. I've even played Azure Lane on my free time, and I still do every now and again. And I want to evaluate each of the games separately, and I usually want to make a separate video on each of them, such as Arknights on its own, Genshin Impact, Blue Archive, etc. But instead I want to talk about them as a whole, what they each excel at, and some of the pitfalls they fall into. And I will be briefly mentioning the communities of each one and my interactions with them. Keep in mind that because I've covered some games more than others, my interactions may be entirely different and my perception may be different than that than yours. So if, for instance, I say, oh yeah, I like the Blue Archive community because I like them and play the game a lot, and you have had entirely separate interactions to the point to where you hate them, or perhaps just don't get along with the fan base very well, feel free to leave that in the comment section down below. Ultimately, I understand that my perspective on a game and on its community may not be the exact same as everybody else's, and I kind of want to express that and get that out there. That way we all can have a mutual discussion about it down below. Or you can join the Discord server, which will be linked in the description, and we can talk about it there. With all that being said, the game that I've covered the most is either tied between Blue Archive and Genshin Impact. The game that I played the longest would have to be Genshin Impact, followed by Arknights, followed by Blue Archive, though at this point I do think Blue Archive has overtaken Arknights, and my perception of each of these games is varying. I've mentioned numerous times that I enjoy and absolutely adore the way Blue Archive shows its characters, from the Lab 2D screen to the alternative outfits to the event that they're featured in, the club stories that each of them have, and so on and therefore. I think that Blue Archive is, among all of these games, the best at characterization. As many of you have known, I adore Izuna in Blue Archive. She's my favorite character, and I got her swimsuit outfit, and I love it. It's great. And all the additional storyline and relationship quests I was able to get because of that, I am extremely happy and satisfied with. I think Blue Archive is the best in terms of making its characters and units feel like legitimate characters. And yeah, I understand many other games, many other gachas such as Arknights and Genshin Impact to a degree, as well as Honkai Impact, do have characters who feel a bit more grounded with different flaws and traits. But I think from a objective standpoint, at least, Blue Archive requires you to jump through a minimal amount of hoops to access that. Now, I can't speak for something like Nikke because I haven't exactly experienced that, or Eversoul because I haven't delved deep enough to compare them on a base by base level or character by character level. But what I can say is, I can get a unit in Blue Archive, not know anything about them, go through the relationship storyline, whether that be via gaining relationship affection through gifts or through lessons or whatever, and eventually learn more about that character, whether that be through the sub-stories that I have access to based on the club or their individual relationship storyline, and I enjoy that quite a lot. My progression and affection for a unit isn't tied to their relevance in the story, because for a lot of times, even my case in particular, I didn't know who Izuna was. I just got her and decided to play through a relationship, and I was like, hey, she's cute. And I like that a lot. Now, I do think Blue Archive fails in the combat section, but let's be honest here, you don't play Blue Archive for the combat. No one does. If you do, I have serious questions, because it's not very much focused on that. You don't really get a lot of control. You have the unit's skills or EX skills, sure, and you have your team composition, but outside of that, you don't really control anything about them, and that can be a big takeaway. I really don't like that, so I don't focus on it. I'm a very casual Blue Archive player, unless it comes to getting my favorite units. Now, outside of this, you have something like Genshin Impact. And I legitimately enjoy this game. I play it a lot. I like my characters, I like my lore. Sometimes I will be making an entire video delving in depth to each and every one of these games. And more specifically, I'm making an entire video just for every flaw in the acts of Genshin Impact, as in Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, Act 4. But overall, I think Genshin Impact has provided me with the most solid experience out of any of these games. It's consistent. Don't get me wrong, the writing can fall here and there, but overall, the consistency of the game's combat loop, of the game's, world building is great. It has the very Skyrim-esque feel where I actually just want to explore. Where yeah, there's a main quest, but I don't do it. I go off and do my own thing. But when I do it, it's legitimately interesting. The characters I meet from events are fun and likable, and the characters themselves are great. And sure, they all have relationship or really character storylines, for at least the 5 stars individually, but the events focus on newer units, such as the previous one focusing on Hu Tao and Jinyan, and the current one focusing on Ayaka. I think overall, the solid experience I get, and Genshin was my first, so I understand I'm a bit biased towards it, but I think it's provided me with the most consistent, solid experience, and that I actively want to play it more often. And for me individually, the account progression standpoint is very palpable. I like knowing that I can get a unit And if I really like that unit, I can crown them. And for a lot of individual people, they don't crown their favorite unit. So it's really just a sign of affection. Or constellations, or 5-star rarities, or weapons. All of it can show your investment and adoration for a unit because by and large, the investment required to crown a unit or triple crown them is not necessary. And I like that. I like being able to present my favorite unit on my character showcase, on my profile, and have individuals look at them and say, oh, they're triple crowned, you must like that. So I think overall, the progression, you can feel the difference in your account from like the beginning of the game to the end of the game. You can see the difference in your stats from the beginning of the game to the end of the game. And even though a lot of people have issues with the artifact system and how RNG dependent it is, I think it does provide a common ground. You can't just pay your way to better artifacts. Everybody suffers the same. And so as a result, when everybody sees a good piece, they're like, man, I want that. And I think as a result, it provides a very good common ground between whales and free to place because everybody understands, yeah, that's a bad artifact. Yeah, we all want a better one. You can pay for characters and weapons. You cannot pay for good artifacts. And even though you can have great weapons, characters themselves will make the biggest difference. And the artifacts will make the largest difference in your account. And if you can't pay for that, you all suffer the same. So your sense of account progression is great. And even though we all have high standards, everybody still plays the game. So we all like it to a degree. I just think that overall, because the size of the community gets the worst reputation. Don't get me wrong, the community it's not the best. I will say Blue Archive's community is better. But I also think Blue Archive's community just doesn't really care. Genshin's community is large, and the minority of individuals who are extremely negative are very loud. People who have fun and just chill and just like the characters they like, they're quiet, they don't care, they're just having fun. But it gets a bad reputation amongst a lot of individuals for either the characters themselves, like Klee, or for the fact that you have individuals who, like for instance, the accusations against Signari's voice actor. True or untrue, I think it still doesn't necessarily do anything good for the reputation because, let's be honest here, it happened. I haven't even looked into it, but I know 20 different things about it and I've seen 18 videos. Whether the accusations are true or untrue, it gives Genshin a bad rep. So that's definitely a negative, and it's very annoying. Next up, Arknights. I covered the game, I dropped the game. There was a very consistent timeline. You can see when I started and you can see when I ended. And you know what? I think from a design standpoint, the characters look great. I think the music is a banger, and I think the community can be extremely helpful, and a lot of them are very, very nice. I've had some great interactions with a lot of the community, and if you're in my Discord server, hey, just so you know, I think you're pretty cool, if you even watch this video. But I also have my own issues, and you know, if you've watched those videos on Arknights, you know my issues with the gameplay loop or with the community itself to a degree. Overall, I wouldn't say it's the best gacha. I would say, each and every one of these have their own individual flaws. If you don't like tower defense, you're not going to like Arknights. If you don't like not having control of a unit, you won't like it in Blue Archive. If you're not very fixated on the character designs themselves, there's not much for you there. If you don't like the way Genshin is in terms of its RNG or its progression, you're not going to like it. I'd say Honkai is more combat focused, so you can play that. Punishing Great Ribbon is more combat focused, so you can play that. And each of these have good alternatives. You had Tower of Fantasy for Genshin. Is it a viable alternative? Hey, look, that's not the story. Honkai Star Rail, Honkai Impact. You have, I think Punishing Great Ribbon are relatively decent alternatives to one another. Star Rail is just turn-based, and that's not released yet. Eversoul is an adequate alternative to something like Nikke. Slightly, to a degree, kind of, sort of, you know, they're all iffy. They have the relation, you know, look, they're different and vaguely the same. It really just depends on what you want. I think that each game can excel in one thing. I think the biggest issue itself and the biggest drawback for a lot of these is how they're perceived from an outside perspective. Nikke was originally viewed as just a game that was built around fan service. If it has legitimate quality behind it, people aren't going to pay attention to it. People hear about how great Arknights is quite a lot, and about how it's one of the best or most amazing gacha games to experience. And I think for some, and myself included, that leads to a lot of hype going in that really isn't going to be matched by any game. Whilst I think the community has a very large part to play in all of this, how you're perceived and how that interaction goes, I do think that each of these games is worth playing. They're all free, let's be honest here. Whether you agree with the monetization structure of gacha games or not, whether you're free to play or a whale, it doesn't matter. They're all free to jump in. And you can drop them at any time. I mean, I drop some of them. I occasionally will hop on Arknights, do Annihilation, and then just hop off. I don't cover the game because I don't play the game. But I want to know yours. What are your perceptions of each game? How would you rank your top 3 gachas? I would rank mine as in Genshin first. I'd say Blue Archive second. I would probably, even after all of this, have to say Arknights third. And if not Arknights, I'd probably have to say Eversoul, just because I really like some of the character designs. But I'm always looking for new gachas to come out. So hey, if you have another gacha game that you want him to play, hey, ping me. Hey, have a community tab. Head over to the Discord server, any one of them. But overall, they're all great. And I may have issues with some of them. I may not like a lot of them. But if you do, that's all that matters. Besides, 80% of the players who play gacha games just like the character. Let's be honest here, they're trying to sell you the character. If you simp for the character, you simp for the character, and I simp for a fair few characters, specifically one being Azuna, and that's kind of it.